Hey everyone, Anders Sundquist here, host of the podcast Lean In. Today we're going to break down some of the art and the science of talent acquisition. Today's guest is Anastacia Flores, Director of Talent Acquisition and Enablement over at Snap. So welcome, Anastacia. Thank you for joining me on the show today. Really excited to jump into defining enablement and talking about some of the subcategories as we get into the weeds here. Thanks for joining the show, Lean In, and excited for you to fill in the audience today. So people and talent leaders and their direct reports, how you got into talent acquisition and this role at Snap in the first place before we dive into enablement.
Sure. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
So
welcome.
I've been in the TA space for 20 years, and I started my career at Google back when it was tiny, and we actually had an
Google
office
was tiny at one
in
point?
Denver.
Whoa.
It was multiple thousands of people, but it wasn't, hundreds of thousands as if it is now. So I was one of the first technical sourcers hired on to the team in an office at that point in Denver, Colorado, and dove right into learning how to source. It was one of those things, I think, like everybody else in talent acquisition, you just kind of fall into it. You don't ever grow up being like, I want to be a recruiter.
I didn't major in this, right?
No, none of that. And so, yeah, I think I interviewed and got the job within a matter of days, which was unheard of. And from there, it just took off. So, because Google was so small, my role morphed pretty quickly. I spent a good chunk of time doing the sourcing, and then the company was growing so much that I actually shifted into training the sourcers. So, we had classes of sourcers that were coming in on a multi-week basis, 50 plus people at a time.
Wow, big cohorts. Yeah.
Big cohorts, yep. And then some folks would stay and continue, their time with Google, and other folks would leave. So after that, I'd been there for a few years and shifted more into the PM space. And so through a lot of my time there, and then in the subsequent roles that I had, I've pulled out all of these different parts and facets of talent acquisition and done almost everything. And so that's what a lot of my role now incorporates.
Well, thank you for the background and the context. And I didn't major in talent acquisition either, but here I am, a TA leader and a podcast host. And so it's an interesting career because everyone has different roads that lead to this space. And also every company has different definitions, not really of talent acquisition, but some of the subcategories. And today, if you're tuning in just now, we're talking about enablement. And we're going to talk about, what this means to you and Snap and some of those subcategories like the programs, DEI and some other things, but just high level, can you define for us, what is enablement and how did you come into this specialty?
Yeah. So at Snap, talent acquisition is enablement is basically everything except the full lifecycle recruiters. So my org houses the rest of it, the behind the scenes, the sausage making, the support structure, whichever, jargon you want to use. So we
Love that.
have university hiring, sourcing, recruiting operations, recruiting coordination, data and analytics, talent brand, DEI and belonging partnership and inclusion with our other teams. And then we have a subset of PMs that are also within my org. So a little bit of everything. And we are enabling, as the word says, our full cycle recruiters to focus on the things that they do best, which is bringing those candidates through the process, having that conversation with the hiring manager, and making the best hire and the best fit for Snap. So a lot of our role, we're focused on doing things for the team and providing benefits for the team of automation and, streamlining and removing roadblocks and things
Yeah.
like that. There are elements of what we do to the team related to legal guidelines and those types of compliance trainings and such that also fall into our org, but we try to, as much as possible, enable and allow them to do their jobs really, really well.
So thank you for that. And I would agree that sounds like a really robust definition of enablement. And at Snap, it sounds like that empowerment piece is huge based on the operationality. And there's probably a stack that you use and a process that you've defined that's helped evolve the evolution of enablement. I'm curious if you can give us the high level of how enablement has evolved, maybe not just at Snap, but as an industry in the past few years, as my observation is TAs become increasingly operationalized. And as we have more AI tools and a different infrastructure today that's more efficient, we're seeing some of the efficiencies percolate. But just what's your opinion on the evolution of enablement?
I think that it has grown out of just
Yeah.
operations.
Yeah.
Now it is more inclusive of these other components of things. I have frequently been in the operational side of the talent acquisition space. I excel in those process oriented areas. I'm a linear thinker. There's always a process, there's always a spreadsheet, there's always a
Yes, there's always
document.
a spreadsheet. Yeah.
And recently, enablement has evolved from that and gained more respect as well. It used to be that operations, those were just the things that were kind of expected and they happened, and nobody really paid attention or looked at the why or supported the team. And oftentimes they were the first folks that were, disregarded and
Yeah.
not having a seat at the table. Now, understanding how tools and systems have grown and developed and the impact that our talent acquisition teams can have when they are better enabled, it has grown, it has evolved, and it has also been more cross functionally
Yep.
focused, I'll
Yeah.
say. So there's a lot more engagement with people across the organization than I've had in the past. Previously, pretty siloed. You worked with very specific people on very specific things just within talent acquisition. And so now with that expansion, it expands not only the what's in the team, but also what's with outside the team.
Right. And I'm hearing increasing partnership and visibility with both the business and finance. And especially as we're in this era of doing more with less, there's a focus on those efficiencies. And I think we'll get to more of that in a minute. But wanted to kind of segue into, I touched on this, the tools, the systems, the processes, the infrastructure. The word AI is the buzz of the day for sure. But I wanted to talk about tooling and talk about the tech stack that you use and maybe why you chose the kinds of tools that you have. And if you want to talk about any specific tools, please do. But let's unpack a bit about that and how the right stack and infrastructure can unblock those bottlenecks.
Totally. Most of what we use within talent acquisition at Snap has been here before me, and we have continued to use it.
Wow, say more.
Yeah, so we have our lovely ATS of Workday.
Okay, no comment.
We own Gem as a CRM.
Excellent.
We utilize LinkedIn Recruiter, as most folks do. We have Good Time from a scheduling perspective. And then recently, we've brought on Seek Out for our sourcing function. That's the one tool that we did bring on since I've been here. The others have been in place previously. When I came into Snap, we were at a turning point, I will say, of still felt like a startup to putting on our big person pants. And so many of the people that were in the roles before were super scrappy, doing more with less, and just kind of
Yeah.
running at the problem,
Yeah.
not thinking big picture, scalability, data integrity, tracking, reporting, all of those things. So a lot of over the past 3 years where I have worked to expand things has been with a focus of that and using our tools in that way. So we've kept a similar tool stack, but we have looked at how we can make the tools work better for us. And we've expanded, the partnerships, the integrations, the
Yeah.
data, some of those types of things in order to make them more effective. We've gone on listening tours with our teams. We continue to do quarterly and monthly road shows to tell them what we've heard and what we're changing, and then get feedback. So, there's probably better tools. There's always a better tool, but
Well,
nothing
there's
is
always
perfect.
there's always a new tool, but I wanted to
Yes.
actually unpack a little more granular detail. And we skipped over this in the beginning, so now's a great chance just to share the scale of your team and also the location diversity, globally. So tell us a bit more about the team. Managing a global TA enablement team is a heavy lift, but then I want to ask that with the comma space and the adoption of tools and how you've coached adoption with, say, a new tool like Seekout so that it actually has an impact.
Yes. So my org is set so that the big parts of the subject matter expertise have a leader below me. University has a leader, operations has a leader, data, sourcing, all of those points have a subject matter expert. So I've done all of the things within my org at some point in time, some more deeply than others. And so I have that layer to really drive that specificity and that expertise and that support with their teams, which is working really, really well. So I'm happy about that.
Go team. Yeah.
Yes, the global piece is really interesting because the majority of my team is based within the US. And actually, my key operations person that supports our international team is on the East Coast. And we've been able to work out that support because that's super challenging with time zones and such. But
Yeah.
most of the team is within the US, but then we have recruiters that sit in EMEA and in APAC. And they have different challenges that they're trying to solve. They have different problems that they need, focus on. And so a lot of the adoption is developing the baseline of you must do these things, and then building on and providing that flexibility depending on the team or depending upon the region. So there's certain things that our sourcing function in EMEA has done really, really well because they have the ability to pilot and pivot quickly. And so we're actually working to adopt some of those things on our sourcing team in the US.
Wow.
And so you have it's a blessing and a curse. You can't
Yeah.
have the same standardization and the same change management and the same adoption for everybody because it's going to be used in a different way and there's different challenges that are going about it. Listening to the folks, asking questions, getting their feedback, testing things out, launching and then iterating are all things that are really, really critical and important. And understanding where you thought it was going to work, you launch it and it doesn't work, and that's okay. Pivot, change,
Iterate.
learn from the failure, so to speak.
Right, right. And when you look at the global team, one thing we've touched on, and TA leaders would say this topic's in vogue right now, is contingent workers and what ratio of full-time to contractors or temps or hourly, whatever synonym you want to put on there, being a lever of flexibility these days, whether that's a staffing firm or a payroll scenario. But what are you seeing as the sweet spot ratio in this market for your enablement team?
We have a mix of folks within our sourcing function and our recruiting coordination function. The other functions are full-time. We have ongoing consistent needs for those roles. Within sourcing and the RC world, it ebbs and flows. And so right now we have a 70, 30, 60, 40-ish split.
Sure.
Because we want to be able to respond to the market, the world, the business, all of those things. We've also looked at the type of roles that we have and the mix of the levels within those teams to ensure that we have different support to lean on based on the different needs that we have. A junior level sourcer is going to deliver things differently than a senior level sourcer, evergreen versus one-to-one, those types of things. And so making sure that you have that variability and also growth path for humans on the team is really, really critical. And I don't know that it's perfect, but it's worked for the past 9+ months. And it
Yeah.
seems to be a good trend that we're leaning into.
And when you look at so I want to segue back into like tools and infrastructure, and let's choose I guess Seek Out as an example, and shout out to the Seek Out team for making probably one of the better DEI enabled sourcing tools. The features and attributes that you can filter by are impressive. There's some agentic workflows there, but not what I would call full co-pilot. And I want to ask, as you investigate tools for Snap and look to be forward thinking, do you investigate like full automation co-pilot tools? And is that something that you would consider in the future as we look at this new age of AI?
So when we first started looking at Seek Out, we ran a pilot with them with a mix of recruiters and sourcers. We got great feedback. We determined where are the pockets with what we hire for that the tool is beneficial for. And then we continued from the pilot into a full contract. We've since adjusted because our sourcing team has grown and now exclusively our sourcers are in the tool. And so that is the sweet spot that we've found. Now, with respect to the automations and the AI, we have a human eye looking at all of the applications. We don't utilize AI in the hiring process at Snap.
Mm-hmm.
There are great benefits that can be had there. We haven't implemented any of those because we don't know where the AI, the information that the AI is leaning on is ingested from a human. Accuracies occur. And so we want to make sure that we are still staying
Equity
true.
is an issue, can be. Yep.
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah. We don't want to introduce potential bias. And obviously I understand that there's, unconscious bias that happens from everybody, but as much as we can keep the human eye looking at the candidates, identifying who's moving forward, reviewing the interview feedback, assessing them in a really clear manner with strong interview questions and an interview plan and people utilizing the tools that we have, that's the process that we follow for now. Who knows where it will go in the future? We, very similar to other companies, are looking at how AI can assist in evolving our day-to-day, our repetitive tasks, refining emails and,
Yep.
summarizing notes and some of
Yep.
those things. But the end-to-end hiring are pieces that are done by our team exclusively. So we're not leaning into those functions in tooling yet.
The full. So if you're tuning in and scared about AI replacing, entire TA teams or your job, I think if I were to distill what you said, is that's not happening at Snap, and humans are in the loop in the decision-making process. And I think there's a lot of misunderstandings, and you see a lot of posts on social media. I won't name what platforms, but sometimes there's a lot of fear mongering about, entire industries being replaced, and I'm just not seeing that with
No,
yeah. So
humans are not just involved in the process, they're making the decisions in the
decisions,
process.
yes.
So AI has come all of a sudden overnight. It feels like we were talking about it, we were kind of talking about it, and then like, hello, it's here.
Yeah.
It's everything you should do. And it's great. It's helped speed up a lot of things on my day to day,
Yep.
but there's still the human eye, still the review, still the critical thought that needs to go into it. And so to me, it feels like more has to be put in before we can fully lean on that to make decisions on our behalf. Right now, it is a tool to help create efficiencies or to streamline or to clean up or to organize and summarize and analyze. But there's still a person looking and reviewing and clicking through to make sure that it's
Yeah.
right.
A question, this kind of segues into the tools space, but we definitely have audience members that are selling software in the TA and recruiting space, and AI is definitely in vogue. And there's a question. I'm curious, when you're evaluating a tool, even say you mentioned Good Time or Seek Out, what is your relationship with procurement or legal to onboard a new tool? And talk to the audience about, if you discover a tool that the team really wants and you believe it will have a successful impact on the team, but there might be blockers with security or legal, like how can you talk to the TA audience today about how to navigate procurement and legal for new, and there's going to be new AI tools every day of the week, how
Yes.
to onboard them successfully as a vendor?
Yes. My legal partners are some of my best friends at Snap. We talk all the time.
Touche. Yeah.
So I think starting there is a good piece to understand. You don't want to get too far in the process before you have the conversations with security to understand if something is possible. So it is a bit of a delicate dance. You don't want to get to the point where everybody's invested. You've told the team something is happening, and then security say like, "Really?
Block.
We can't do that." So understanding what is the problem on the team, why are we looking to solve this? What does this tool do to solve it? And then having that discussion with the legal team in a fairly streamlined, as clear and crisp manner as possible. And even walking it through with them. Screen sharing in a demo or something like that can be really, really useful. I've been able to develop pretty strong relationships with our legal teams so that we have a really good back and forth, and we can ask the hard questions and have the good debates and get to what makes the most sense for Snap legally and what makes the most sense for the talent acquisition team. And there are many times where we tell them that there's a feature or a function or something that we want to use, and there's not support for it. And we understand, we'll look at a different way to do it and ask some questions. And sometimes we've been able to get things over the line and utilization of certain features that are not exactly as they're defined, but
Right.
with a little twist for us. And so a lot of it is that discussion, collaboration, understanding, and partnership. And then once you come to this, high level agreement of like, this tool could work, ensuring that that security conversation is happening in quick form after can be really helpful so that you're not blocked later on. All the while, you have to keep the team in the loop on some of these things and then
Communicate,
explain
communicate, communicate. Right.
exactly. And why didn't we launch this? And where is this feature? And my friends over at company XYZ can do this. I get that. That's super cool. Unfortunately,
Right.
here's our tool.
If we could wave a magic wand, right? Yeah. Yeah. I think And that comes back to the change management
Yes.
piece that you mentioned. And communication is key with all of the stakeholders involved to, get a new vendor or tool on board and communicating with the team that would ultimately use it. And I think the same goes for contingent workers too. I just had a friend who runs contingent working at Pinterest on the show, and he talked about how they build what I would call like niche vendors to cover niche roles with, contingent workers across the entire organization. Curious if you can talk to the audience today about how you choose those vendors to cover your capacity gaps in an intelligent way as well.
So one of the first things is that I have one of those subject matter experts on my team that runs that program. And she has been in this space for years and knows it really well. But more than knowing it really well, she has amazing relationships internally.
Yep.
So we're actually finishing out some work to provide more clarity to the business as to what type of contingent worker do I select? What are the approvals? How do I do this? Who do I talk to? So we're finishing out a really clear workflow so that leaders can understand, okay, I need additional resources for this certain project. Where do I go? How do I do this?
Yeah.
So there's better tie-in now with HR that's happening so that the business leaders can talk to their HR partners, describe what's happening. They're looking at the workforce planning and they're providing advice as well to ensure maybe this should be a full-time resource, not a contingent workforce. Let's talk through that. Then it goes through kind of our contingent flow. And depending upon the needs, we'll partner with an agency or we'll partner with a vendor or those types of things. And there's lots of checks and balances that are in place and more that we're streamlining this quarter and next quarter to be able to provide that benefit to the business, but so that they don't have to go and find who they're supposed to partner with.
The Wild West. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on the agency side, if there's a need, we send that out to all of our partners. It is not I'm this leader, I want this person, I want this, go here. We try to avoid that favoritism. We try to have that broad inclusion.
Right.
So that we can look at all of the different opportunities and all of the different humans that could come in and fulfill that need. So we do have that kind of broad swath. So to speak.
Right. And it sounds like what you're doing is you're creating an infrastructure for contingent workers, and you're creating an inclusive process to find the right solution for the business. And to say more on that topic, and we touched on this, check out the episode with Pinterest if you're tuning in today and want to learn more. But compliance, governance, so important when we're talking about temporary or contingent worker labor, where misclassification can get folks in hot water. We've seen some lawsuits in the past 12 months with companies that use that, pull that lever in a misguided way. So very important, especially in a market where, and I've been through a few cycles myself. I've seen the boom and bust cycle, especially during COVID, and the 2008 cycle as well. Contract labor can be in vogue during a downturn because they're looking to fill a gap in a way that's very flexible. And in this past downturn, I noticed a pattern of payrolling folks or EORing folks that's like referred from the network, an engineer's referral of a software engineer who, they want on contract for a short time, or a sourcer or a recruiter or what have you, and just making sure it's done in a compliant way. There's governance involved, and so you don't get into hot water downstream, and that all feeds right into what you're talking about with this enablement piece.
Yep, exactly. There's a lot of the system piece and the compliance piece and the legalities at the same time. There's also the piece of ensuring that you have fair and equitable hiring practices, whether these humans are contingent or they are full-time. We want to make sure that we are providing that opportunity to the broad population, identifying who is qualified, assessing them in a fair manner, and making the best hiring decision. Not my friend, your friend, his friend, their friend, whatever, but going through that process to ensure that you're bringing on the best person to do that job, whomever they are.
I think, so that was the perfect segue, and was my next set of questions, which I wanted to spend enough time on. In fact, we could do an entire episode on this, and some bold questions here, right? So since we've been talking, I was really attracted to, what you said, your philosophy and Snap's philosophy is about DEI, inclusion, equity. It's no secret this has changed in tech overnight to, some are calling it meritocracy or MEI. And I want to focus on the positive here and what you're doing, and be able to teach, the listeners today, if anyone's keen on being able to build this, let's call it equity and inclusion, into the systems and processes in your organization. Take notes now. Inclusivity is woven into every part of a process. It's not an afterthought. So how have you done that at Snap, and how does that continue today, even with the new administration and the changes that have happened?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we've ensured that we are legally compliant with any of the changes that have been made. At the same time, we are staying true to our values at Snap of kind, smart, and creative. These are things that live within everybody that works here, and they are super, super important. And that goes back to what I was just saying about the fair and equitable hiring process and ensuring that you are hiring the right person for the job, not a person because of some other factor. And so that is the approach that our team takes when they're going out and sourcing for candidates, when they're assessing candidates, and when they're putting them forward for interviews. And this year, we have put more structure in place with our interviewing process to ensure that we are assessing against our values and we are assessing against competencies. And we have a strong, robust interview plan where leaders and interviewers are assigned areas to assess the candidate against so that you have that full circle approach. And then that feedback is submitted in a clear manner. And then there's a debrief discussion that happens. We also have a pre-brief that occurs before the interview to ensure that we're all aligned. So my assumption of the role is the same as your assumption of the role. So we're going in looking at the same
Interesting. So you align definitions
Correct.
before a debrief to create.
We align before the interviews.
This isn't okay. Say more about how that evolved.
So it started last year of looking at where we were in the evolution of hiring and where we saw gaps. And we wanted to ensure that we were making great hiring decisions. And so we've developed a program to put more of this structure in place. And it starts with what we were calling the kind of the success metric. And that's honestly the job description, but it's ensuring that the job description is accurate for what we're hiring that person for. But beyond that, once we have the interview panel selected, or if I'm the hiring manager, I bring those folks together with the recruiter. And we have a discussion and go through the job. And we also talk about what each interviewer is assessing and why that person is assessing it. So if you have a cross-functional partner, maybe you're talking about the approach that the person has and their ability to communicate. If you are somebody that has a challenging role, maybe you're highlighting one of our values of courage and the ability to speak up and have a discussion and that really strong debate to get to the right answer. If you are a leader, you're looking at decision quality or strategic mindset. And so we make sure that people understand the job, why the job description is written the way that it's written. People can ask questions of what's missing, what's a minimum qualification, preferred qualification. And then we go into those specifics of what each person is assessing. And then my interview feedback is against what I assessed. And I'm making a hiring recommendation based on those values and competencies.
And how, I have so many questions about this. Thanks for sharing the kind of creative approach to alignment, and which leads to equity at Snap. Are there tools beyond the process that you described? Are there tools that you use to help efficiently do this? Do you want to say more to the audience about that today?
So we've built it out temporarily in Google Sheets. We are building an internal tool to be able to guide this more strategically. And so right now we're tracking manually, unfortunately, whether certain actions are occurring. And thank you to one of my PMs for doing that to make sure that change management is happening, right? We also are just finishing out the design of that internal tool. And then we're working with our engineering team to scope, all of the things to scope, make sure that we are listening to the feedback of the business, the feedback of talent acquisition, and looking at the candidate experience and how these things will occur. And then we'll build that out. And that will be the tool that we'll use for the interview process.
Very cool. So next year, if we do episode 2, we'll have an update there. I look forward to hearing how that tool goes. Curious if, so this process and this role alignment and definition that you've basically built over the last year, curious if this ties into any post-hire metrics, quality of hire. Is there any correlation that you're seeing between all this enablement that we've talked about on the show so far and then post-hire attributes or signal about a performance of a candidate?
That's exactly where we're going. Right now, the
Destination.
focus
Yep.
is that change management. Is the pre-brief happening? Do we have an interview plan? Was the feedback submitted before you
Yep.
had the debrief? Those are the areas of focus for the first half of the year. We can't assess the quality of the hire if we don't know if those things are occurring.
Right. It's like a formula. We need y equals mx plus b. We need to know the formula to get to the equals. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So once we have confirmation and we feel like those things are occurring consistently, we have the adoption and we can pull some of the data from the new system. We will then be building on top of this to say, okay, we want to now track the quality of hire. We want to look at the performance. We want to look at promotion rates, all of those things down the line, years to come. But that's exactly where we would like to go, and tie it in with, the long-term internal mobility or performance of a human at Snap.
Totally. And I'm sure, well, I guess my personal opinion would be this is a place where AI, or let's just say new tooling and infrastructure, can help companies big and small, where we can create equitable interview processes and post-hire review, say with like an interview recording tool, and there's many out there, but I know for myself, I make mistakes when I'm transcribing. And so one of the areas that I've seen like AI maybe create a more inclusive hiring process is that recording and summary, and maybe matching those interview signals with JDs and with the alignment that we just talked about. So I'm hopeful that as an industry, we can evolve into using these kinds of tools to then create equity through a fair hiring process.
I agree. We don't have any of those implemented currently, but we do on the human side. That pre-brief is a little bit of a double check to ensure that the job description is right, because you can kind of crowdsource from the people and the interviewers when they're hearing what you're saying, and they could say, wait a minute, that's missing from the job description, or that wasn't part of the interview plan. Or so we have some of that, again, humanistically. But I agree. I think that there's potential benefits that could occur with AI and that for sure in the future.
Yeah, I certainly hope so, because and I want to ask one more question about I'll just use the word, equity in tech hiring. And things have changed dramatically over the past 12 months. And just, asking for your personal opinion on a forecast for where we'll go as an industry with what was once DEI and now let's, just call it an equitable hiring process, for lack of a better term. But where do you personally think we'll go as an industry in the next 3 years with that really rapidly changing dynamic?
I think that there's some companies, as we've seen, that I won't name, have just said, thank you. You've made my life easier. I no longer have to do these things. I'm going to hire my best friends and we're going to call it a day. There's
Agreed.
other companies that have said, okay, we have to do these things legally. However, there are things that we believe in and we want to remain fair and equitable, and we want to bring in the right person for the role. And I think we're going to continue to see that opposition.
Bifurcation. Yeah.
Yes. And I think that it's also going to create moving and shifting of humans that are at that company. And I've recently seen that with some folks that we've brought onto our team, where they have left an organization because of the decision that they made and joined an organization
Yes.
because of the decision that they made.
Yes.
And it'll go both ways. I think it'll
Yeah.
go both ways. But I think that we will see that divide, and we will see a shift. And then in a few years, maybe we go back and we rebuild the things that we used to have, or maybe there's an evolution in a different way because the tools are in a different place. The AI is in a different place. The market's in a different place.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think I'll answer my own question even more high level, which is anecdotally, I'm hearing candidates increasingly choose to interview and choose to join companies that align with their own philosophies or morals or values, or and many other subcategories there, not just equity and maybe what a CEO said that's offensive, and now I don't want to work at that company, but hey, I'm interested in your company. DEI or equity and inclusion, or even product and domain and response to some of these things is a part of that. I'm also seeing other decisions, like I'll use RTO and remote as an example, where some companies have put their flag in the sand and said, hey, we're 5 days fully back in the office because of this reason, or the CEO said, or it's a business decision. Others have embraced a true hybrid or partial hybrid, and others have put their flag in the sand and said, we're full remote forever for these reasons. So what I'm seeing is a different landscape for candidates than really ever before, which is, hey, I'm going to choose to join your organization because of these philosophies and these policies, where it used to be a little more aligned, this is just my opinion, on things like, say, the role or compensation or other personal factors. Am I right?
I think that there is an element of that for sure. And I think some people have limitations in those areas that are almost pushing them to choose the company because of that. I would hope that people are still also picking a company based on the role, the growth, the opportunity, the impact that they can make. And I do hope that those things can meld together. I have seen some of that as well, but I, as a human that loves to provide that growth to her team and have people move internally and go into that thing that they've always wanted to do,
Yeah.
I would really hope that humans are still joining companies because they're excited about the job and the work that they can do and where they can go, not just, well, they let me work from home 2 days a week, which is super important, but stay true to yourself as well and
Yeah.
ensure that you're growing and developing.
Yeah, the that's why it's a job description, not a company benefits description. Then, by the way, you'll be coding these features or hiring these people. Yeah. So times are changing. And I think that if there's one thing more clear to me than ever is this might be the most dynamic market I've worked in. And, I'm curious, what does your crystal ball say about enablement? Let's go talent acquisition just as a whole, as an industry in tech. Where do you see, let's say, in 12 months, and then extend out, 36 months, so, 3 years, 4 years from now, us being as an industry within the enablement piece, that you talked about, and that your role is really focused on, and then even more esoteric, just as an industry in tech?
I think that the nimbleness and the flexibility becomes even more important than it has been because the world is moving and shifting and going back and forth so much faster than it has before. And so companies and talent acquisition teams and enablement teams need to respond to that. So you need to stay as lightweight process and operationally fungible as you can. And I think that that's going to continue for some of the time being. I think that on a broader scope, the growth of humans that have had almost their whole life customized since birth,
Yeah.
getting into the workforce, that changes how you're doing things and what
Yep.
is being offered and what people want. At the same time, you have the entrance of AI,
Yes.
creating streamlining, efficiency gain, maybe reducing some of the,
Wow.
the thought process that went
Yeah.
into play.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how those come together. I've had my life customizable. I have AI to make it easier. I don't have to think as much, and I am massively simplifying this, but how
Yeah.
does that change where we're going, what we're doing, and the jobs that we need, and debate and discussion and best practice sharing and some of that. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know either, and I sometimes focus on or change my opinion when I pull out my Anders crystal ball. And you just touched on something that made me think of the word atrophy, which is where I've heard some folks say, well, AI might make us, as let's say folks in TA, atrophy with certain skill sets. Maybe the crude analogy would be full self-driving, if anyone's ever used that feature in like a Tesla or a Waymo type car where the car's truly making decisions for you. I think that, I guess, when I look at how AI has empowered my team and I and my clients and the recruiters, sourcers, and RCs in them, what I'm seeing is actually not the word atrophy, but empowerment, which is, I think the new wave might be, we will see where AI can truly empower and enable efficiencies. And we're going to have more of like a talent architect, relationship building focus on in our organizations, and be able to focus on those things with the candidates, with the business, with the finance and those stakeholders. And yes, manual tasks, we might atrophy on sending calendar invites. We might atrophy on, adding individual profiles to lists of candidates. Those things might happen. But what it does is it allows us to be empowered with more of the TA mirroring. And this is a crude analogy again, but maybe sales or BD teams where there's been, perhaps we've followed the sales teams with using the tools that they do to increase go-to-market funnels and strategies. maybe TA kind of mirrors that sometimes, but just a couple of years latency behind. I've heard that analogy from guests on my show, and I think that might be something we see. And I could be wrong, but I think that that's what I'm seeing in terms of the next 1 to 3 years.
I think it also depends on how the AI is introduced and the training, support, change management to be the true PM that I am that goes into it. So if you just give somebody the tool and they learn how to do it themselves, they may put less human thought and review to it because they're trusting the tool more than somebody else who says, I still need to have
Yeah,
the human eye, I still need to adjust
yeah,
or use it in a different way. And
yeah.
so I think that I agree, some of those basic tasks can and will go away. Great. But some people are going to use it in a different way, use those tools and those systems in a different way based on how it was introduced or the point in their life it was introduced or the way that they got the training on it.
There's another, I'm curious if you've heard of this with organizations' knowledge share and like the latency between internal institutional knowledge being exchanged. And I'm hearing this trend from like AI TA consultants or, head of TA type folks with large public companies where they're considering building internal GPTs. So with whatever model that might be, let's say ChatGPT, and let's say Snap or some organization XYZ might have a customized GPT where the sourcer can ask, wait, how many employees do we have today? And how many countries are they in? And what is the pay rate in London compared to the Bay Area? Or just a question where they want an instant answer and maybe they can't ping you or their direct manager because they're in a different time zone. Are you seeing, I don't want to, if there's a secret here, I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's something I've been hearing and it sounds very exciting and very cutting edge, but is this real? Is this happening?
I think I've had similar conversations, and I think it depends on what is ingested into that tool that
Yeah.
would be getting out. So if you're ingesting something that is not accurate, not updated or whatever,
Hallucinations happen.
right. Now, if the team is taking the time to update or develop process documents that AI tool, whatever it is using to pull the information out, great. Then that leader doesn't have to answer the question from all of their new hires that they inevitably get. That person can go and ask a question. But again, there's this finesse that happens with it and ensuring that the database that it is coming from, the accuracy of that, and that
Yep.
you trust it. And so I think time will
Garbage in, garbage out. And I'll say maybe that's my 5-year crystal ball answer because I use ChatGPT throughout the day a lot with my partner. For my family, we ask, sometimes medical questions or real estate questions or what have you. And they still hallucinate a lot. So we always
yes,
fact check. And I would caution anyone tuning in today for a silver bullet answer.
totally.
Fact check your AI assistants out there. So
100%. It's
I,
interesting though to see
it,
what it feeds sometimes. So
well, sometimes it's comical and I end up laughing and I go, no, this isn't right. So I think it's our job to, back to the word ethics, use AI ethically and understand that things do hallucinate. It's our job to have that human in the loop and be aware of what the data might be. So with that said, are there any parting words you want to share with our audience today about, enablement and how they might empower their teams to be successful in this really dynamic market?
I think one of the biggest things and the successes that we've been able to develop within Snap is the partnership, communication, and trust within the team, within broader TA, within our cross-functional partners. We're still evolving and making things better. And without being able to have that strong relationship with the people that you work for, your clients, so to speak, you're not going to be able to continue to enable your team. Pulling the ego out of things, going to other leaders that you work with, say, what do you need? How do you need it? Where can we help? Listening, adapting, pushing back where needed in a polite manner, of course. That's only going to make everybody that much more effective. And so understanding that there's a little bit of a push and a pull and there's a different time and a space for all of these things, and you're always evolving and there's always a different way to do it. That openness and that, like I said, communication and trust can make you really successful. So
Can confirm. I'll just say I agree. That's the reason I'm in talent acquisition is I'm a people person and it's all about the relationships. So in summary, focus on nurturing those relationships and careers will flourish. So I want to say thank you again. I've learned so much having you on the show. It's been an honor. Thanks for joining the Lean In podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye everyone.